Howdy, 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 Craftykins. Welcome back to another video. Today I am walking through the entire process of creating a new journal for JunkJournalJuly. This is a challenge that's hosted by MegJournals. She has a YouTube channel, and also I mainly follow it on Instagram, but I can leave a link down below once the prompt list comes out. But I just wanted to create a little journal dedicated to this challenge. It's going to be like just my July junk journal. And so the first thing I'm doing, I'm using a file folder for the cover, and I'm just doing a whole bunch of random collage. I wanted it to be a project I could use some of the things in my collection, in my stash, that I don't reach for often because I don't tend to use very much color most of the time, and I have all these things I love in my stash that I just never end up using, and I want this whole project, like the whole Junk Journal July, to just be about using up some of these things that I love, and just being more free with what I'm using and not thinking too hard and just playing around with paper, which is what we all love, right? So I'm really not thinking hard about any of these decisions I am making here. I'm just grabbing whatever's in front of me and, maybe ripping it into a different shape or something. Yeah, it was really fun. And I do like how it turned out. I was kind of nervous, like, I'm going to make this video, I'm going to film everything, and I'm going to end up being like, I don't even like it. But luckily that wasn't the case. But I'm using all kinds of things. I'm using scraps, things I've ripped little pieces off of in the past. Printables, I'm using scrapbook paper and book pages and encyclopedia pages, like all kinds of things. There's deli paper there. There's like vintage school paper, ledger paper. And here in a minute, after I get like most of the background covered, I'm going to have stickers of all kinds and little like die cuts and stamps, like authentic vintage stamps and things that I start to add on as well. This is a book page. I just did some like mark making doodles, and yeah, so that's the first step that I've done, is mainly focus on background elements and covering up all of that dark green. Even though I like that dark green of the file folder, I did end up covering pretty much all of it. I think all of it at the end, but yeah. It's a very sturdy cover, lots of gluing. My poor glue sticks got a workout on this project. I whipped out the purple ones I have left because sometimes they can leave a little bit of purple left over. And in this project, it's all about scrappy, and I didn't mind at all about that. So lots of purple glue. That piece there it's like a thicker cardstock piece that I was worried the glue stick wouldn't be sturdy enough to keep that thing stuck down, so I used some double-sided tape on that tag. Yeah, so just moving along with the collage, cut the border off of stickers quite frequently. I find they have excessive borders sometimes that I just don't want to deal with, so I will take the time to cut the border down at least a little bit. So you'll see me do that quite a few times. And I loved using these stamps here, there, and everywhere. I bought like a rainbow pack from an Etsy shop and came in very handy for this project. There were still a lot of pieces I think will go with this journal that I wasn't able to get into the cover because there just was too much. Not enough room, I guess. And but I'll keep them in a little pile for if I can squeeze them in on a prompt day for Junk Journal July. Inside the journal will be cool too, but there's just too many things. So many goodies. It's hard to choose which ones to use. And like I said, I was trying to think like as little as possible. So whatever was like grabbed my attention, I grabbed it and tried to find a place for it. Just filling in some of the blank pieces. So if you guys like collage, like this, like layers and layers and just random bits and pieces, I follow this Instagram account. I think it's Chimichanga with like 3 or 4 A's at the end. And oh my gosh, every single picture they post, I'm just like gaga over. I love that style. And so this is like inspired by that Instagram account and like that style of collage, just like all kinds of things mishmashed together that somehow work. And I definitely don't think I'm on par with that with that account and whoever runs that, but I am happy with the end result. I think, somehow all of these colors and all these different styles and everything, like it just came together. I feel like it works, and I like all of the things that I used, which probably helps. So instead of trying to like fussy cut that middle white part out of that teapot, if you can see that, I just inked it so it wasn't that white or, fresh book page color. And I think that was very effective. Now onto the inside cover. That fragile sticker that I stuck on there earlier, that dark green, I have been like having in the corner of my desk forever, like wanting to use it because I love it. But so I was determined to use that one on this project. That's why I put it on there so early, I think. It's just make sure it gets in there. Before I started, I did have an idea that it was going to be like a lot of stitching and stuff on here, like stitch attaching a lot of things, but then I ended up, when I was in the process, working on the front cover and the inside cover at the same time, basically. So I was like, well, that's not really going to work out now, and that ended up being just fine. I love how it ended up. Here I'm just going to ink along the edges on the front and the back to make it look a little bit more finished. And then I'm going to move on to the second step. So the cover is now finished, and well, mostly finished. I do a little bit later on as well. But after this, it's time to pick out some papers. So I just raided my stash, just like for the cover, just digging through to see things I've had for a very long time that I wanted to use, and that kind of went together. I was seeing a lot of reds, kind of, and so there were a couple of things I pulled for red. Now, I did make a big mistake when I was first pulling all these papers because I did the math wrong, even though I've made junk journals many times before. I was counting each sheet of paper as 2 pages when really it's 4 pages. So I had twice as many papers as I needed. In this step here, you'll see, and I end up having to clean out a lot of it because I didn't mind having a few extra pages, but I wanted it to be, something I was going to be able to complete in July and not have still hanging around a lot. So I did end up still with a couple of extra pages, but here you're seeing me pick out like way too many. So in later clips you'll see it pared down already, and that's why. It happens to the best of us. So just in case there's anybody here who's brand new to making their own journals, after you choose which papers you want to use, you need to measure and make sure they're going to fit inside of the cover that you made. So you can do these in reverse order too. You can pick the papers you want and then create a cover afterwards. So you can make it the dimensions you need that way too. But either way, you need to measure that before you get too far along in the process, or you're going to have to end up chopping off some stuff that you might really like. So that's what I'm doing here, is just measuring off. I created that first page as kind of a template, and then I'm using that to measure the rest of the pages and do my trimming. Step number 3, I wanted for this journal, because I used a whole bunch of really random stuff, I felt like, different colors and all kinds of patterns, that I wanted a couple of things to just like be cohesive throughout the journal. And I thought that using scraps, and I had like this big sheet of that white tissue paper that I was like, if I have that on every page, it's really gonna bring things together. That'll be like a common element on every page. But as I was working on it, and you'll see here, some of them you add it on, and it's like a very subtle layer. And then for other pages, other sheets, it's like straight up white and really like high contrast. I don't know. It wasn't looking how I had imagined it looking, and also it was really annoying trying to glue stick all that tissue paper because it's so thin, and I was getting really just aggravated doing that over and over and over again. So at a certain point I quit and decided to try some other strategies for creating some cohesion. So what I ended up using are a couple of sprays that I found in the back of one of my drawers. You'll see here in a second. I did it off camera, but I used a couple of colors, and they had a little bit of a shimmer, and I even did the cover as I'm showing you here. I got them on clearance at some point a long time ago, and the sprayer didn't actually work very well on most of them. But we got the job done, and I really like how that added that cohesion factor. So after those all dried, I whipped out my big box of stamps. I'm currently reorganizing those, like how I'm going to store those. They used to be in drawers, and it just wasn't working very well. So anyways, I'm just going through and doing some stamping. I chose a couple of inks I thought would look okay with like the color scheme kind of that we're going with, and just went crazy. Again, there wasn't a lot of thought going into it. It was just kind of like some background stamps and willy-nilly all over the place. I tried not to do too much of the same thing over and over again, but on the other hand, I kind of did want some repeating elements to, just tie it all together. But I really like how it ended up turning out, and stamping is just one of my favorite things. Because, you can make it stand out, you can make it subtle, you can layer them. There's just all sorts of things. And it just makes it look more dimensional, maybe. I don't know. I just really like it. You may also notice that I am kind of using several different colors to ink each stamp, most of the stamps, and it just kind of, I really like that effect of not really tie-dye, but just gradient, I guess, to the stamps, and I like that effect as well. So something you might want to experiment with yourself if you haven't tried it before. The other thing to keep in mind if you are doing stamping at this point in creating your journal is you want to keep it as background as possible. You know, there are a couple of pages where I kind of did more of like statement ones, I guess, but you want to make sure it's nothing you are going to feel like you can't layer over, because you know that's hard to work in a journal where you feel like it's halfway done already. You're really just looking to create a background where you can build up from there. That's going to be interesting to see peaks of it back behind what you end up working on that page. So as of the time I'm making this, the prompt list isn't out yet, so I have no idea what the prompts are going to look like, but you know, there's always room to kind of interpret them however you feel like, and at the end of the day it's just another journal of your own, you know. Nobody's grading you or anything, so it's not that big of a deal, but just like more of an inspiration jumping off point. But yeah, you don't want to like have too heavy of a theme or anything before you get started even. So this is just background, dimension, layering sort of details you're adding now. And as you work on the daily prompt, you might want to add more stamping. You never know. The next step is to arrange all of your like finished background papers into a signature. So you'll want to think about, you know, sizing and colors and texture and all those things as you're building your signature. And you're also going to want to like line them up the way you want them. So, you know, if the page is shorter than the biggest page, you know, do you want it higher up on the page, lower down on the page, right in the center? You know, get them kind of right where you want them now, because we're about to bind it. And yeah, I mean, you can go through it a million times. I definitely went through it more times than I'm showing here on this video, flipping back and forth. That's part of the fun of it. And once you sew it in, you know, you could always do it again, I guess, but it's kind of the final step here. You can't really go back without much more an annoying work. So that's what I'm doing here, getting them into the space I really want them in, doing a quick flip through one more time. Before I bind it. So now it's time for binding. I have already used my awl, you can see over there in the corner, to punch holes through the signature and the cover. And I chose this like thick ribbon to bind with this time. And so I did like the simplest binding ever. I started on the outside, which I wouldn't normally do sewing in a signature because I usually would tie it in the inside, but I wanted a big bow on the outside at the end. So I started on the outside and I'm coming in. It was really hard to get that giant ribbon. I was amazed I could get it on my needle, honestly. I have a giant needle that I usually use for binding because I don't like fussing around trying to get string through one. And by some miracle, I was able to get it through. So I only have 2 holes here. It's not the sturdiest binding in the world, but you know, this is just a fun experiment kind of journal, and I didn't mind that at all. You can use regular thread. You can use embroidery floss. People use waxed thread. I don't have any of that. That's on my wish list of craft supplies to get some cool colors of waxed thread. But yeah, use what you have. And I'm just going to tie a big old bow here on the outside, and that's it. I'll do a quick flip through at the end so you can see all the pages finished. Always check that it's actually tight in the middle, because sometimes you'll tug on it and it'll feel tight, but it's actually not in the middle. It's just snagged on something. So always double check that. That's another bit of wisdom from prior mistakes I've made. You want to try and get it as tight as possible so that your pages aren't wiggling around and trying to fall out, you know. There you go. So here is the final flip through. I think those sprays especially is what really tied everything together. I feel like the journal pages go together already, and so it's just ready for me to add in whatever may come, and it'll all kind of look like it belongs. So thank you guys for watching this process. I hope you enjoyed it, maybe got some ideas or inspiration, and I hope that you will also join in on the Junk Journal July journey. I will be posting frequently, hopefully, on my Instagram account. I'll leave it linked below. I'd love it if you follow along, and also just follow me so I can follow you back and see your work. And yeah, have a happy scrappy July. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. To different degrees. Some of them are splashy, some of them have a lot of spray, some of them have bigger drips.
Are you talking to yourself?
To the camera, baby.
Why?
I'm recording a video so people can see this journal that I'm making.
Mommy, watch, listen how loud my motorcycle engine is.